Welcome to Stoic Vivu, where ancient wisdom meets modern life through the power of story. I'm here to show you how 2,000-year-old philosophy can solve your most pressing problems today, not through lectures or theory, but through the real experiences of people just like you who discovered these life-changing principles when they needed them most. Today, we're diving into 9 ancient secrets from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who proved that absolute power doesn't have to corrupt absolutely. While other rulers throughout history became tyrants, Marcus Aurelius became a philosopher. While they built monuments to themselves, he built a legacy of wisdom that still guides millions today. And while they crumbled under pressure, he discovered principles that can help you turn your worst days into your greatest victories. Picture this: Rome, 165 AD. A plague is sweeping through the empire, killing millions. The economy is collapsing. People are dying in the streets. Panic and despair fill every corner of the known world. And at the center of it all sits the most powerful man on earth, facing a choice that would define not just his reign, but his character. Marcus Aurelius could have retreated to his palaces, surrounded himself with luxury, and waited for the crisis to pass. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone. He walked through the imperial palace and began marking items for sale. For 2 months, he sold the emperor's jewels, robes, couches, and priceless artifacts right on the lawn of the palace. The message was clear: I won't put myself first when my people are suffering. But here's what makes this story remarkable. It wasn't just a publicity stunt. This action revealed the first secret that would carry Marcus Aurelius through 20 years of wars, plagues, and personal tragedies. It's the same secret that can help you navigate job loss, relationship problems, health scares, or any crisis you're facing right now. You see, Marcus Aurelius understood something that most people never figure out. The worst moments of your life aren't punishments, they're opportunities. Every disaster, every setback, every day when everything goes wrong is actually a chance to practice something that can make you stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you've ever been. During that plague, while others saw only death and destruction, Marcus saw an opportunity to practice generosity, leadership, and sacrifice. When barbarian tribes attacked the empire's borders, while his generals saw only threats, Marcus saw opportunities to practice courage and strategic thinking. When his own son turned out to be a disappointment and his wife may have been unfaithful, while others would have seen only personal failure, Marcus saw opportunities to practice forgiveness and emotional resilience. This wasn't positive thinking or wishful optimism. This was a practical philosophy that transforms how you see and respond to everything that happens to you. And over the next 9 secrets, you're going to see exactly how ordinary people in cities across America discovered these same principles and used them to completely turn their lives around. The first person we're about to meet had just lost everything she thought mattered: her job, her confidence, and her sense of direction. But in that moment of complete defeat, she stumbled upon Marcus Aurelius's most powerful secret. The one that teaches you how to turn every disaster into your advantage. Ancient secret number 1. Turn every disaster into your advantage. Sarah Chun stared at the email on her laptop screen for the 3rd time, hoping the words would somehow change. We regret to inform you that your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. After 7 years as a marketing director at a prestigious Manhattan firm, she was out. At 34, with a mortgage in Brooklyn and credit card debt from years of expensive city living, this wasn't just a career setback. It felt like the end of everything she'd worked for. The coffee shop on 42nd Street, where she'd retreated after cleaning out her K buzzed with the usual morning rush. Business people in sharp suits hurried past her table, everyone seeming to know exactly where they belonged. Everyone except Sarah. "This is a disaster," she whispered to herself, watching her savings account balance on her banking app. But as Sarah sat there spiraling into panic, she noticed an older man at the table next to her reading a worn paperback book. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The man noticed her looking and smiled. "Rough day?" he asked, gesturing to her laptop and the pile of tissues on her table. "Just lost my job. 7 years. Gone in one email." The man nodded knowingly. "I lost my business in 2008. 20 years of work wiped out. Thought it was the worst thing that could happen to me." "Was it?" He laughed. "Turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. This guy," he said, holding up the book, "taught me something that changed everything." Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Sarah shook her head. "I don't see how losing my job is happening for me." "Did you really love that job? Or did you love the security, the way it let you avoid taking risks?" The question hit hard. The truth was, she'd been feeling stuck for over a year. The work had become routine, her boss micromanaged everything, and she'd stopped learning months ago. But the salary was good and leaving felt too scary to consider. "When I lost everything," the man continued, "it forced me to ask questions I'd never asked before. What did I actually want to do with my life? What would I try if I knew I couldn't fail?" I became a high school history teacher, something I'd always thought about but never had the courage to try. The obstacle became the way to finding what I was really meant to do. Sarah felt something shift. Over the next hour, she found herself thinking about what she actually wanted. She'd always been passionate about sustainable living and had a side blog about eco-friendly city living that had quietly grown to several thousand followers. She dreamed of turning it into something bigger, but never had the time while working 60-hour weeks. The man David, as she learned, shared more wisdom from Marcus Aurelius. The emperor faced constant obstacles, plagues, wars, betrayals, but he developed a practice of asking, "How can this make me stronger? What virtue can I practice here? What opportunity is hidden in this challenge?" When the plague hit Rome, David continued, instead of seeing only death and despair, Marcus saw an opportunity to practice generosity and leadership. When barbarian tribes attacked, instead of seeing only threats, he saw opportunities to practice courage. Every obstacle became a chance to become better. Sarah opened her laptop and started typing, but this time it wasn't panic-driven job applications. She began outlining a business plan for turning her sustainability blog into a consulting firm for eco-conscious city dwellers. The idea had been buried under her someday maybe list for 3 years, but suddenly it felt inevitable. "The obstacle," she said out loud, testing the words, "becomes the way." "Exactly," David smiled. "Your job ending isn't a disaster. It's a redirection. The question isn't why this happened to you, but what this is preparing you for." 6 months later, Sarah's sustainable living consultancy had 12 regular clients and a waiting list. She was making less money than in her corporate job, but she woke up excited about her work for the first time in years. The firing that felt like the end of her world had actually been the beginning of her real career. But the most important change wasn't professional. It was how she viewed challenges. When a client demanded impossible deadlines, instead of panicking, she asked, "What is this teaching me about setting boundaries?" When a family crisis interrupted her work schedule, instead of seeing disruption, she saw an opportunity to practice flexibility. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words in his personal journal nearly 2,000 years ago, but they'd become Sarah's daily practice. Confine yourself to the present, not because the present was always pleasant, but because the present, even when it contained obstacles, was where all possibility lived. The secret wasn't that bad things don't happen. The secret was that bad things could become the raw material for building something better than you ever imagined. Every setback contained within it the seeds of a comeback. Every closed door was really an arrow pointing toward a door you'd never noticed before. As Sarah learned, obstacles don't block the path. They are the path. And when you truly understand this ancient secret, you never have to fear another bad day again. Because you know that your worst day might just be the beginning of your best life. But knowing how to see obstacles differently is just the beginning. Because even when you can see opportunity in every challenge, you still have to take action. And that's where most people get stuck, caught between knowing what to do and actually doing it. The second ancient secret is about bridging that gap between intention and action. Ancient secret number 2. Stop waiting and start now. The action rule. Marcus Rodriguez sat in his Honda Civic outside the Chicago Sports Center at 5:47 a.m., watching other people walk through the front doors with their gym bags and water bottles. He'd been sitting there for 13 minutes, which was exactly how long he'd been telling himself he was definitely going to walk inside and finally start working out. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. The membership card in his wallet had been gathering dust for 8 months. 8 months of "I'll start Monday," followed by "next Monday for sure," followed by every excuse his brain could manufacture. At 31, Marcus could feel his energy disappearing, his clothes getting tighter, and his confidence shrinking. But knowing he needed to get in shape and actually doing something about it were apparently two completely different things. His phone buzzed with a text from his girlfriend. "Jessica? How's the gym going, babe?" He typed back, "Great. Just finished cardio." The lie came so easily it scared him. Marcus put the car in drive and headed to work, promising himself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he'd have more energy. Tomorrow he'd feel more motivated. Tomorrow he wouldn't feel like such a fraud sitting in a gym parking lot, watching other people do the thing he kept saying he wanted to do. At work, Marcus managed digital marketing campaigns for a consulting firm. He was good at his job, especially at helping clients break down overwhelming projects into manageable daily actions. The irony wasn't lost on him that he could strategize anyone else's success but couldn't get himself to walk through a gym door. During lunch, Marcus found himself scrolling through productivity blogs again, looking for the secret that would finally make him the kind of person who just did things. That's when he came across a quote that stopped him cold. "You could be good today. Instead, you choose tomorrow." The quote was attributed to Marcus Aurelius, and it felt like a personal attack. How many times had Marcus literally said those exact words to himself? "I could start eating healthy today, but I'll begin the diet on Monday. I could go to the gym today, but tomorrow I'll have more energy." Curious, Marcus clicked through to read more about this ancient emperor. What he found was a man who had every excuse in the world to procrastinate, running an empire, fighting wars, dealing with plagues, but who had somehow figured out the secret to consistent action. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I have to go to work as a human being.'" The emperor had struggled with the same basic problem Marcus faced every morning: the gap between intention and action. But here's what Marcus Aurelius understood that most people miss. The problem isn't motivation, timing, or having the perfect plan. The problem is treating the first step like it has to be perfect, significant, or worthy of the end goal we imagine. Marcus, read more. The emperor didn't wait until he felt like being disciplined. He didn't wait until conditions were perfect. He understood what the Stoics called the discipline of action, taking the next right step, regardless of how small, regardless of how imperfect, regardless of how you feel about it. That afternoon, instead of driving home after work, Marcus made a decision. Not to become a fitness fanatic, not to transform his entire life, not to commit to some elaborate workout plan. Just to walk through the gym doors. That's it. No agenda beyond crossing the threshold. He changed into workout clothes in the parking lot and walked inside. The teenager at the front desk scanned his dusty membership card without comment. Marcus looked around at all the equipment and felt overwhelmed again. So he walked to the treadmill area and got on the first available machine. He didn't run. He didn't even walk fast. He set the speed to 2.5 miles per hour and just moved for 15 minutes while listening to a podcast. When 15 minutes were up, he stopped, changed clothes, and went home. The next morning, Marcus woke up and felt exactly the same. No burst of motivation, no transformation, no sudden love of exercise. But he remembered something else Marcus Aurelius had written. Confine yourself to the present, not the person you want to become, not the goal you want to achieve, just the next right action available right now. So he went back to the gym. Same 15-minute walk on the treadmill. Same unremarkable feeling afterward. But something interesting happened on day 3. Going to the gym stopped being a decision and started being just something he did. By week 2, Marcus had added 5 minutes. Not because he'd planned to, but because 15 minutes started feeling too short. By week 4, he was occasionally jogging for short intervals. Not because he'd committed to a running plan, but because walking had started feeling too easy. The transformation wasn't dramatic or Instagram-worthy. After 3 months, Marcus had lost some weight and gained some energy, but the real change was deeper. He'd proven to himself that he could close the gap between intention and action. And once you prove that to yourself in one area, it starts showing up everywhere. Marcus began applying the same principle to other stuck areas. The novel he'd been going to write for 2 years? Instead of waiting for inspiration, he started writing 1 paragraph each morning before work. The Spanish he'd been going to learn? Instead of buying another course, he spent 10 minutes each day with basic flashcards. The secret wasn't finding motivation or waiting for the right moment. The secret was what Marcus Aurelius had discovered during his own morning struggles. You don't wait until you're ready to begin. You begin and then you become ready. Marcus Aurelius faced this same challenge every morning when he didn't want to get out of bed to deal with plagues, wars, and political crises. His solution wasn't to wait until he felt like being emperor. His solution was to ask, what is the work of a human being? And then to do that work step by step, regardless of how he felt about it. 6 months after that first 15-minute treadmill walk, Marcus had developed something more valuable than fitness. He developed practical wisdom. The understanding that action creates motivation, not the other way around. That small, consistent steps compound into significant change. That the bridge between who you are and who you want to be is built one unremarkable day at a time. The discipline of action isn't about having perfect motivation. It's about moving forward despite imperfect motivation. And once you master this ancient secret, procrastination loses its power over you. Because you understand that the work of being human isn't to feel like doing the right thing. It's simply to do the right thing, step by step, day by day. But even when you're taking action consistently, there's still an enemy that can stop you in your tracks. The anxiety that comes from trying to control things outside your control. The third ancient secret reveals where that anxiety really comes from and how to eliminate it at its source. Ancient secret number 3. Why your problems are all in your head. Lisa Martinez stared at her phone screen, heart racing as she refreshed her email for the 4th time in 10 minutes. Her client hadn't responded to her proposal yet, and her mind was spinning with worst-case scenarios. What if they hated it? What if they fired her? What if word got out that she was incompetent? The familiar knot in her stomach tightened as she imagined her freelance graphic design business crumbling. Living in her Venice Beach apartment, Lisa had built a successful career over 5 years, but anxiety followed her everywhere. Traffic on the 405 made her panic about being late. A delayed text from her boyfriend triggered fears about their relationship. An unexpected bill sent her spiraling about financial ruin. She'd tried meditation apps, therapy, exercise routines, and every stress management technique Google could offer, but the anxiety always returned. The pandemic had made everything worse. Even though she worked from home and avoided crowds, her stress levels skyrocketed. She couldn't understand it. Fewer external pressures should have meant less anxiety, right? But somehow, with less happening around her, the worrying had only intensified. One evening, scrolling through articles about anxiety management, Lisa discovered something that stopped her cold. It was a quote from Marcus Aurelius. "I escaped anxiety. Actually, no, I discarded it because it was within me in my own perceptions, not outside." The emperor had written this during the Antonine Plague, while millions died and Rome's economy collapsed. If anyone had legitimate external reasons for anxiety, it was him. Yet he'd realized something profound. Anxiety wasn't caused by external circumstances. It was caused by his internal response to those circumstances. Lisa read the quote 3 times. It was within me in my own perceptions, not outside. She thought about her worst anxiety episodes. The client who hadn't responded, that was external. But the stories she told herself about what their silence meant, the catastrophic future she imagined, the shame spirals she created, those were internal. She remembered a particularly bad week when her biggest client had delayed payment. The actual situation was straightforward. They needed accounting approval, which took time. But Lisa's mind had created an elaborate narrative about them being dissatisfied with her work, planning to fire her, and spreading negative reviews that would destroy her reputation. The anxiety wasn't about the delayed payment. It was about the horror movie her imagination had written. Marcus Aurelius understood this distinction because he'd lived it. Ruling an empire during plagues, wars, and political upheaval, he could have blamed his stress on external circumstances. Instead, he made a revolutionary discovery. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The next morning, when Lisa caught herself spiraling about a new project deadline, she tried something different. Instead of fighting the anxious thoughts or trying to reason them away, she simply acknowledged them. I'm telling myself stories about failing and disappointing everyone. Then she asked, what's actually happening right now? Actually happening. She had a project due in 3 days. She'd completed similar projects many times before. She had the skills and time needed to do good work. The story her mind was telling. She was behind schedule. The client would hate her work. She'd lose the contract. Other clients would find out. Her business would fail. She'd have to move back with her parents. The gap between reality and her internal narrative was enormous. Over the following weeks, Lisa began practicing what Marcus Aurelius called examining her initial impressions. When her boyfriend didn't text back immediately, instead of jumping to a relationship catastrophe, she'd pause and ask, what story am I creating here? Usually, the story was far more dramatic than reality warranted. She discovered that most of her anxiety came from trying to control things completely outside her influence. Whether clients approved her work, how traffic moved, what other people thought of her. These were external events she'd been treating as personal responsibilities. Marcus Aurelius had faced the same challenge on a massive scale. He couldn't control whether plagues swept through his empire, whether barbarian tribes attacked his borders, or whether senators plotted against him. But he could control his response to these events. He could choose courage over fear, wisdom over panic, justice over revenge. The Stoic principle Lisa learned was simple but revolutionary. We don't control what happens to us, but we always control how we respond. This wasn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. It was about recognizing where your actual power lies. When Lisa's biggest client did eventually give feedback on her proposal, they requested several changes. Old Lisa would have interpreted this as failure and spiraled into self-doubt. New Lisa recognized it as normal business communication. She made the requested changes professionally and delivered excellent work. The project was successful not because external circumstances were perfect, but because she responded to imperfect circumstances with skill and calm. 3 months later, Lisa realized something remarkable. Her external circumstances hadn't changed much. She still dealt with demanding clients, uncertain timelines, and financial fluctuations. But her internal experience was completely different. The anxiety that had shadowed her for years had largely disappeared, not because her life became perfect, but because she stopped trying to control things beyond her control. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "Confine yourself to the present." This wasn't about mindfulness for its own sake. It was about recognizing that anxiety lives in imagined futures and regretted pasts, not in present reality. When Lisa focused on what was actually happening right now, rather than what might happen or what had happened, she found that the present moment was almost always manageable. The emperor who faced plagues and wars discovered what Lisa learned in her Venice Beach apartment. Most human suffering comes not from external events, but from the stories we tell ourselves about those events. Change the story, and you change your experience of life. This ancient secret reveals that you're more powerful than you think. You can't control whether clients respond quickly, whether traffic flows smoothly, or whether other people approve of your choices. But you can control the most important thing: how you interpret and respond to everything that happens to you. Once you understand that your problems are largely created by your perceptions, you gain access to a superpower: the ability to find peace regardless of external circumstances. But maintaining that peace requires something most people struggle with: the discipline to start each day with intention. The fourth ancient secret shows you exactly how to build that foundation. Ancient secret number 4: win every day before breakfast. David Kim's alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m. in his Boston apartment, and like every morning for the past 3 years, he hit snooze, then hit it again. By the time he actually dragged himself out of bed at 7:15, he was already behind schedule, rushing through a shower, grabbing coffee and a granola bar, and sprinting to catch the red line to his software engineering job downtown. The day would start frazzled and somehow never recover. Emails piled up faster than he could answer them. Meetings ran over. Code reviews took longer than expected. By evening, David felt like he'd been reactive all day, responding to other people's priorities instead of making progress on what actually mattered to him. He had goals: learning machine learning, building a side project, getting in better shape, reading more books, but they lived in the realm of someday when I have time. Every night, he'd promise himself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he'd wake up early and finally work on the things that mattered. But tomorrow always looked exactly like today. David's girlfriend, Rachel, was the opposite. She woke up at 5:30 a.m. every day, did yoga, journaled, and read for 30 minutes before work. She seemed to glide through her days with a calm focus that David envied but couldn't understand. When he asked her secret, she said, "I win the morning, so the morning doesn't beat me." "What does that even mean?" David had asked. "It means I take control of the first hour of my day before the world starts making demands on my time and attention." David dismissed this as something that worked for morning people, but not for him. He wasn't naturally early riser. He needed his sleep. He'd tried morning routines before and they never stuck. He was just different. But one evening, feeling particularly frustrated with another unproductive day, David found himself reading about Marcus Aurelius online. He discovered that the Roman emperor had faced the exact same struggle and had written about it in his personal journal nearly 2,000 years ago. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, "I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do?" Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, had struggled with getting out of bed. Just like David, just like everyone. But here's what David found fascinating. Marcus didn't overcome this struggle by becoming naturally motivated. He overcame it by creating a morning routine that set him up for success regardless of how he felt. The emperor would wake up early, sit with his journal, and prepare his mind for the day ahead. The journal that survived as meditations was actually his private morning practice, the thoughts of the most powerful man in the world, writing to himself to become better. David, read more. Marcus Aurelius understood something profound. Well begun is half done. How you start your day determines how the rest of your day unfolds. If you begin reactively, responding to alarms, rushing through tasks, letting other people's priorities dictate your time, you'll spend the entire day playing catch-up. But if you begin proactively, taking control of your first hour, focusing on what matters most, preparing your mind for challenges, You set yourself up to handle whatever the day throws at you. Inspired, David decided to try an experiment. Not a dramatic overhaul, just one small change. He would wake up 15 minutes earlier and spend that time doing something for himself before checking his phone or email. Day 1 was terrible. He felt groggy and resentful, spending the 15 minutes mostly staring at the wall and questioning his life choices. But he'd committed to trying for a week, so he continued. Day 2 was slightly better. He used the time to read a few pages of a programming book he'd been meaning to get to. By day 4, something interesting happened. The 15 minutes felt too short. David found himself waking up naturally a few minutes before his alarm. Not because he'd become a morning person overnight, but because he'd started associating early morning with something pleasant rather than stressful. He extended the routine to 30 minutes. 15 minutes of reading, 15 minutes of planning his day. No phone, no email, no external demands. Just David deciding what mattered most and preparing for it. Within 2 weeks, David noticed something remarkable. His days felt completely different. Not because external circumstances had changed, but because he was approaching them from a position of strength rather than weakness. Instead of starting reactive and scattered, he began each day clear and focused. Marcus Aurelius had discovered this same principle while running an empire during plagues and wars. His morning practice wasn't about luxury or self-indulgence. It was about preparation. Concentrate like a Roman, he would remind himself. Do this as if it's the last thing you're doing in your life. The emperor understood that leadership, effectiveness, and peace of mind all began with what he called self-discipline. The commitment you make to yourself before the world starts making demands on you. David's routine evolved. After 6 weeks, he was waking up at 6 a.m. and spending an hour on his priorities before work. He made progress on his machine learning course, outlined his side project, and felt more energetic throughout the day. But the biggest change wasn't what he accomplished, it was how he felt. He'd discovered what Marcus Aurelius knew. The person who controls their morning controls their day. And the person who controls their day, day after day, controls their life. The ancient secret wasn't about becoming a morning person or following someone else's routine. It was about understanding that you have a choice. You can either own the first hour of your day or let the day own you. Marcus Aurelius faced barbarian invasions, political conspiracies, and family tragedies, but he never faced them unprepared. His morning practice equipped him with the mental clarity and emotional strength to handle whatever came next. David's challenges were different, but the principle was identical. By claiming the first hour of his day for himself, he transformed from someone who felt constantly behind into someone who felt consistently prepared. This fourth ancient secret reveals that winning isn't about what happens to you during the day. It's about how you prepare for what happens. When you start each morning with intention instead of reaction, you've already won the most important battle. The battle for control of your own time and attention. But even with a strong morning routine, you'll still face the ultimate test. Dealing with difficult people who seem determined to ruin your day. The fifth ancient secret shows you how to handle even the most impossible people without losing your peace of mind. Ancient secret number 5, the people problem solution. Jessica Rivera sat in the conference room, watching her coworker Brad take credit for her project ideas for the 3rd time this month. As the marketing team lead at a Miami tech startup, she'd spent weeks developing a social media campaign strategy. only to hear Brad present it to their boss as his own brilliant insight. Her jaw clenched as he gestured enthusiastically, explaining his creative concepts to impressed nods around the table. After the meeting, Jessica stormed back to her desk, furious. This wasn't just about Brad. It was about her micromanaging boss who questioned every decision, the finance guy who always shot down her budget requests, and the new intern who spent more time on TikTok than actual work. Some days, Jessica felt like she was surrounded by incompetent, selfish, or just plain difficult people who made her job 10 times harder than it needed to be. She'd tried different approaches. Being assertive with Brad had labeled her as aggressive. Being accommodating with her boss had made him pile on more oversight. Trying to mentor the intern had been met with eye rolls and attitude. Jessica was exhausted from managing everyone else's personalities instead of focusing on her actual work. That evening, venting to her roommate Sophia, Jessica declared, "I can't deal with these people anymore. They're driving me crazy." Sophia, who worked as a therapist, asked a simple question. "What if the problem isn't them?" "What do you mean?" "Brad literally steals my ideas. My boss treats me like I'm incompetent. The intern doesn't do any work. How is that not their problem?" Sophia handed Jessica a book she'd been reading. "This might help. It's about a Roman emperor who had to deal with way worse people than your coworkers." The book was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That night, Jessica found a passage that stopped her cold. Tolerant with others, strict with yourself. She kept reading. Marcus Aurelius had written extensively about dealing with difficult people, and his approach was revolutionary. Instead of trying to change others or getting frustrated with their behavior, he focused entirely on his own response. "Don't explain your philosophy," he wrote. "Embody it." The emperor had dealt with senators who plotted against him, generals who questioned his strategies, and family members who disappointed him. But instead of seeing these people as obstacles to his peace, he saw them as opportunities to practice virtue. Jessica was skeptical. This sounded like letting people walk all over you. But as she read more, she realized Marcus Aurelius wasn't advocating passivity, he was advocating power. Real power. The power that comes from controlling the only thing you actually can control, yourself. The next day, when Brad interrupted her in another meeting to build on her idea, with the exact same concept she just presented, Jessica tried something different. Instead of getting angry or defensive, she smiled and said, "That's exactly right, Brad. I'm glad we're aligned on this approach." Then she calmly continued presenting her strategy. Her boss, who had witnessed countless Brad and Jessica tensions before, noticed the difference immediately. Jessica appeared confident and collaborative, while Brad looked like he was scrambling to keep up with ideas that clearly weren't his. After the meeting, her boss pulled Jessica aside. "I really appreciated how you handled that presentation. Very professional. I'd like you to lead the implementation." Jessica realized something profound. By refusing to engage in Brad's game, she'd won without fighting. Marcus Aurelius had discovered this same principle 2,000 years ago. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. She started applying this philosophy everywhere. When her micromanaging boss questioned her decisions, instead of getting defensive, she responded with detailed explanations that demonstrated her competence. When the intern showed up late again, instead of lecturing her, Jessica simply documented the behavior and focused on her own responsibilities. The change wasn't immediate, but it was powerful. Jessica discovered that most of her workplace stress had come not from other people's behavior, but from her emotional reactions to their behavior. When she stopped trying to control what others did and focused on controlling her own responses, her entire work experience transformed. Marcus Aurelius had written, "People are frustrating, but like all obstacles, they are also the way." Jessica began to see difficult people as opportunities to practice patience, communication skills, and emotional intelligence. Brad's credit stealing became a chance to practice grace under pressure. Her boss's micromanaging became an opportunity to demonstrate reliability and thoroughness. This didn't mean becoming a doormat. Jessica still addressed inappropriate behavior when necessary, but she did it from a place of calm professionalism rather than reactive emotion. She set clear boundaries, documented important conversations, and focused on delivering excellent work regardless of the chaos around her. 3 months later, Jessica got promoted to senior marketing manager. In her performance review, her boss specifically mentioned her exceptional ability to work well with challenging team members and maintain professionalism under pressure. The promotion came with a choice. She could transfer Brad to another team or keep him. To everyone's surprise, Jessica chose to keep him. Not because she enjoyed working with him, but because she'd learned something valuable from Marcus Aurelius. Difficult people are the best teachers. Every person you meet, the emperor had written, is an opportunity to practice some virtue, patience, kindness, understanding, or strength. Brad had taught Jessica patience and grace. Her micromanaging boss had taught her thoroughness and communication. Even the lazy intern had taught her the value of setting clear expectations. Jessica discovered that when you stop trying to change other people and start using them to improve yourself, workplace relationships become much simpler. You can't control whether your coworkers are competent, honest, or pleasant, but you can control whether you respond to their shortcomings with wisdom, patience, and professionalism. This ancient secret reveals that the people who annoy you most are actually your greatest teachers. They're showing you exactly which virtues you need to develop. When someone is dishonest, they're giving you a chance to practice integrity. When someone is rude, they're offering you an opportunity to practice kindness. When someone is incompetent, they're helping you practice patience and leadership. Marcus Aurelius understood that we can't choose the people around us, but we can choose who we become in response to them. And that choice, that daily decision to be better than the worst behavior around you, is where real character is built. But even when you master dealing with difficult people, modern life has another challenge. The endless demands on your time and attention that make every day feel overwhelming. The sixth ancient secret shows you one simple question that can eliminate most of that chaos instantly. Ancient secret number 6. One question that ends overwhelm forever. Michael Thompson stared at his laptop screen at 11:30 p.m. in his Seattle apartment, surrounded by coffee cups and the remnants of another dinner eaten at his desk. As a project manager at a growing tech company, his to-do list had 17 items, his email inbox showed 43 unread messages, and he'd attended 6 meetings that day without completing a single important task. Tomorrow's schedule was already packed. A budget review at 9 a.m., a client call at 10:30, lunch with a vendor at noon, a team stand-up at 2 p.m., a strategy session at 3:30, and somewhere in between, he was supposed to finish the quarterly report that was due by the end of the week. Michael felt like he was drowning in his own productivity. The irony wasn't lost on him that he managed projects for a living but couldn't manage his own workload. Every task felt urgent. Every meeting seemed important. Every email demanded immediate attention. He'd tried time management apps, priority matrices, and productivity systems, but they all required time he didn't have to set up and maintain. His girlfriend, Emma, had started commenting on how stressed he looked. "You're always busy, but what are you actually accomplishing?" she'd asked the night before. The question stung because Michael couldn't give a good answer. He was busy all the time but wasn't sure he was making progress on anything that truly mattered. That weekend, while Emma was at yoga, Michael found himself scrolling through articles about work-life balance. Most of them offered the same tired advice. Delegate more, say no to meetings, batch similar tasks. But then he came across something different. A quote from Marcus Aurelius that made him stop scrolling. "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? Because most of what we do and say is not essential." Michael read the quote again. Marcus Aurelius had been asking this question while running the Roman Empire during plagues and wars. If the Emperor of Rome could question whether his activities were essential, maybe Michael could too. Curious, he read more about Marcus Aurelius's approach to priorities. The emperor had a simple practice. Before doing anything, he would ask himself, "Is this essential? Not important, not urgent, not requested by someone else, essential. Would he still do this activity if he knew he was dying tomorrow?" The emperor understood something that Michael was just discovering. Busyness and productivity are not the same thing. You can fill every hour of your day with activities and still accomplish nothing meaningful. The key isn't doing more things better, it's doing fewer things that actually matter. Monday morning, Michael decided to try an experiment. Before responding to any email, attending any meeting, or starting any task, he would ask himself, "Is this essential?" The first email in his inbox was from HR about updating his emergency contact information. Essential? Not really. Could wait until Friday. He moved on. The second email was a meeting request for a project alignment discussion with 8 people. Essential? Michael couldn't figure out what would be discussed that wasn't already covered in their weekly status meetings. He declined and suggested moving the topic to their existing meeting. The budget review at 9 a.m. Essential? Absolutely. The quarterly report essential? Yes, it directly impacted his team's funding. The lunch with the vendor essential? Michael realized this was mostly a social obligation. The vendor wasn't offering anything new, and he wasn't looking to change suppliers. He rescheduled for a brief phone call instead. By noon, Michael had eliminated 3 non-essential activities and gained 2 hours of focus time. He used that time to make significant progress on the quarterly report, which reduced his stress more than any meditation app ever had. The pattern continued throughout the week. The strategy session that was supposed to brainstorm ideas, but never led to actionable decisions? Not essential. The team stand-up that had turned into a 30-minute discussion about issues that only affected 2 people? Essential for those 2 people to discuss separately, not essential for the whole team. Marcus Aurelius had practiced this same discipline while managing an empire. He wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less. Or more accurately, do what's essential." Which brings a double satisfaction. To do less, better. The emperor wasn't advocating laziness. He was advocating focus. By eliminating the non-essential, you gain the time and energy to excel at what truly matters. After 2 weeks of asking, "Is this essential?" Michael noticed something remarkable. His stress levels had dropped significantly, not because his workload had magically decreased, but because he was spending his time on activities that actually moved things forward. Instead of feeling busy but unproductive, he felt focused and effective. His boss noticed, too. "I don't know what you've changed," she said during their one-on-one, "but your work has been really sharp lately. The quarterly report was excellent, and the budget presentation was the clearest I've seen." Michael realized that when you're not scattered across 20 different priorities, you can actually do quality work on the few things that matter. Marcus Aurelius had discovered this principle while juggling the responsibilities of ruling the known world. Most of what we do and say is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. The transformation wasn't just professional. Michael started applying the question to his personal life, too. Social obligations that drained his energy but didn't strengthen meaningful relationships? Not essential. Streaming shows he watched out of habit rather than enjoyment? Not essential. Scrolling through social media for hours? Definitely not essential. He began spending his freed-up time on activities that actually mattered to him. Cooking dinner with Emma instead of ordering takeout while working, reading books he'd been meaning to get to, and taking walks around his neighborhood without his phone. Marcus Aurelius had written these words in his private journal nearly 2,000 years ago, but they became Michael's daily practice. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The power wasn't in doing everything that was asked of him. The power was in choosing what deserved his time and attention. This ancient secret reveals that overwhelm isn't caused by having too much to do. It's caused by not knowing what's worth doing. When you consistently ask, "Is this essential?" you stop being a victim of other people's priorities and start becoming the author of your own life. The question works because it cuts through all the noise and gets to the heart of what matters. And once you master the art of essentialism, you're ready for the next challenge. Accepting the difficult circumstances you cannot change. The seventh ancient secret shows you how to not just tolerate your fate, but learn to love it. Ancient secret number 7. Love your fate, even when it sucks. Amanda Foster sat in the oncologist's office in Denver, staring at the words on the medical report that would change everything: Stage 2 breast cancer. At 38, with 2 young kids and a demanding career as a financial advisor, cancer wasn't part of the plan. Cancer was what happened to other people, older people, people who didn't eat organic and exercise regularly like she did. The doctor was explaining treatment options: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, but Amanda's mind was elsewhere, calculating all the ways this diagnosis would destroy the life she'd carefully built. How would she manage her clients while dealing with chemo? How would she explain to her 7-year-old son why mommy was going to be sick? How would her family survive financially if she couldn't work? For weeks after the diagnosis, Amanda oscillated between rage and despair. She was angry at the universe for this cosmic unfairness, angry at her body for betraying her, angry at other people who complained about trivial problems while she faced a life-threatening disease. Some days she could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by the enormity of what lay ahead. Her sister, Kate, had been through her own challenges, a difficult divorce and single motherhood, and offered perspective that Amanda wasn't ready to hear. Maybe this isn't happening to you. Maybe it's happening for you. How can you say that? Amanda snapped. Cancer isn't a gift. It's not some blessing in disguise. It's a nightmare. Kate didn't argue. Instead, she handed Amanda a book she'd found helpful during her own crisis. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Just read a few pages, she said. This guy dealt with his own share of terrible circumstances. That night, unable to sleep, Amanda opened the book randomly and found a passage that hit her like a revelation. A fire turns everything into fuel and brightness. A small fire is extinguished by the storm, but a great fire is fed by it. Marcus Aurelius had written this while dealing with the Antonine Plague that killed millions, including possibly his own family members. He'd faced military invasions, political betrayals, and personal tragedies that would have broken most people. But instead of cursing his fate, he developed a radical philosophy. Love what happens to you. The Stoics called this amor fati, literally love of fate. Not passive acceptance, not pretending everything is wonderful, but actively embracing whatever life brings as exactly what you need for growth, strength, and wisdom. Amanda was skeptical. Loving cancer seemed impossible, even offensive. But as she read more, she began to understand that Marcus Aurelius wasn't advocating for loving the pain itself, but for loving what the challenge could make you become. She thought about her life before the diagnosis. She'd been successful but stressed, always rushing from client meetings to soccer games to school events, never really present for any of it. She'd been focused on accumulating more clients, more income, more achievements without asking what it was all for. The cancer forced her to confront questions she'd been avoiding. What really mattered? How did she want to spend whatever time she had? What kind of mother, partner, and person did she want to be? Amanda started treatment with a new perspective. Instead of seeing chemotherapy as something being done to her, she began viewing it as something she was actively choosing to fight for her life. Instead of hiding her diagnosis from clients, she was honest about her situation and was amazed by the support and understanding she received. The treatment was brutal. Nausea, fatigue, hair loss, and emotional ups and downs that tested every ounce of strength she had. But Amanda discovered something remarkable. She was stronger than she'd ever imagined. Each round of chemo that she completed was proof of her resilience. Each day she showed up for her kids despite feeling terrible was evidence of her love and commitment. Marcus Aurelius had written, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." Amanda realized that while she couldn't change having cancer, she could change what having cancer meant. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, she could be someone who faced adversity with courage and grace. The most surprising change was in her relationships. Before cancer, Amanda had been fiercely independent, reluctant to ask for help or show vulnerability. The diagnosis forced her to accept support from friends, family, and even clients who wanted to help. These connections, deepened by shared struggle, became some of the most meaningful relationships of her life. Her children, instead of being traumatized by their mother's illness, learned lessons about resilience, courage, and the preciousness of time that no classroom could teach. Her son started doing random acts of kindness, inspired by the kindness their family had received. Her daughter became more emotionally mature, more empathetic to others facing difficulties. Amanda's business actually thrived during treatment. Clients were drawn to her authenticity and perspective. She found herself having deeper conversations about what really mattered in financial planning. Not just accumulating wealth, but creating security and meaning. Her personal experience with uncertainty made her a better advisor to people facing their own life transitions. After 18 months of treatment, Amanda received the news she'd been praying for. No evidence of disease. But by then, she'd already received something more valuable than clean scans. She discovered who she really was when everything non-essential was stripped away. Marcus Aurelius had taught her that fate doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need to become who you're meant to be. Amanda didn't want cancer, but cancer had given her clarity, strength, deeper relationships, and a profound appreciation for life that she never would have developed otherwise. The impediment to action advances action, Marcus Aurelius had written. What stands in the way becomes the way. Amanda's cancer had been the ultimate impediment, but it had also become the way to a more meaningful, authentic, and connected life. This ancient secret reveals that you don't have to wait for perfect circumstances to live fully. Whatever challenge you're facing, job loss, relationship problems, health issues, financial stress, contains within it exactly what you need to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Loving your fate doesn't mean pretending difficulties are easy. It means trusting that every challenge is shaping you into someone capable of handling whatever comes next. But personal transformation, no matter how profound, finds its ultimate meaning in how you use your strength to serve others. The eighth ancient secret reveals life's deepest purpose. Ancient secret number 8. Your life's real purpose. Robert Chun sat in his corner office on the 40th floor of a Phoenix high-rise, looking out at the desert landscape while scrolling through his investment portfolio on his phone. At 45, he'd achieved everything he'd thought he wanted. A successful real estate development company, a beautiful home in Scottsdale, luxury cars, and enough money to retire comfortably. But instead of satisfaction, he felt a gnawing emptiness that success hadn't filled. The previous week, Robert had attended his high school reunion. While classmates bragged about promotions and purchases, he'd found himself wondering, is this it? Is accumulating wealth and status really what life is about? He'd worked 70-hour weeks for 20 years, missing family dinners and vacations, always telling himself it would be worth it when he made it. But now that he'd made it, he felt more lost than ever. His assistant knocked and entered with coffee. "Mr. Chun, your 2 p.m. appointment is here." The representative from the Children's Hospital Foundation. Robert had agreed to this meeting reluctantly. The hospital was seeking donors for a new pediatric wing, and his accountant had mentioned tax benefits. He'd planned to write a check and move on with his day. But when Maria Santos, the foundation director, began talking about the children they served, something unexpected happened. Maria showed him photos of kids receiving treatment. 7-year-olds with cancer still smiling, teenagers learning to walk again after accidents, families camping out in hospital rooms because they couldn't afford hotels. "We serve families from across Arizona and New Mexico," she explained. "Many drive 6 hours just to get here because we're the only facility in the region with specialized pediatric care." Robert found himself asking questions he hadn't planned to ask. How many children did they treat annually? What were the biggest challenges? What would the new wing actually provide? As Maria answered, Robert saw a passion in her eyes that he hadn't felt about his own work in years. After Maria left, Robert couldn't concentrate on his afternoon meetings. He kept thinking about those photos, about families facing crises that made his business problems seem trivial. That evening, instead of reviewing development proposals, he found himself researching childhood cancer statistics and reading stories of families dealing with pediatric illnesses. Something Maria had said stuck with him. These kids don't need pity. They need people who believe their lives are worth fighting for. Robert realized he'd been fighting for profit margins and market share, but these families were fighting for something infinitely more valuable. That weekend, Robert did something he hadn't done in months. He read a book that wasn't about business. His daughter had given him Meditations by Marcus Aurelius the previous Christmas, and it had been gathering dust on his nightstand. Opening it randomly, he found a passage that stopped him cold. The fruit of this life is good character and acts for the common good. Marcus Aurelius, who had possessed ultimate wealth and power as Roman emperor, had concluded that life's purpose wasn't personal accumulation but service to others. The emperor, who could have spent his days in luxury, had instead dedicated himself to the welfare of his people, even selling his personal possessions during the plague to help those in need. Robert, read more. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." Individual success was meaningless unless it contributed to the greater good. The emperor understood that true fulfillment came not from what you gained for yourself, but from what you gave to others. This philosophy challenged everything Robert had been taught about success. He'd been raised to believe that taking care of himself and his family was the highest goal. But Marcus Aurelius suggested that personal fulfillment was actually found in serving something larger than yourself. Robert started visiting the children's hospital, initially just to tour the facilities before making his donation. But those visits became regular. He met families who'd lost everything to medical bills but never lost hope. He saw doctors and nurses working exhausting shifts because they believed in their mission. He witnessed courage in 8-year-olds that put his business anxieties in perspective. One afternoon, Robert met Tommy, a 9-year-old boy receiving cancer treatment. Tommy's father had lost his job to stay with his son, and the family was struggling financially. "Are you a doctor?" Tommy asked. "No, I build buildings," Robert replied. "Cool. When I get better, I want to build a hospital for kids like me, but with a playground on every floor." That conversation changed Robert's life. He realized that his wealth and business skills weren't just personal achievements. They were tools that could make Tommy's dream possible. That night, Robert called Maria and made a commitment that surprised even himself. He would fund not just the new wing, but create an endowment to ensure no family would ever be turned away due to inability to pay. But Robert didn't stop there. He began using his development expertise to design healing spaces specifically for children. He recruited other successful business leaders to join the cause. He discovered that the skills he developed in real estate project management, fundraising, team building were exactly what the hospital needed to expand their mission. Within 2 years, Robert had helped open 3 new pediatric facilities across the Southwest. His business continued to thrive, but it was no longer his primary source of meaning. He'd found what Marcus Aurelius called his true work, using his gifts in service of others. The emperor had written, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present, I am rising to the work of a human being." Robert now understood what the work of a human being actually was. It wasn't accumulating wealth or status. It was contributing to something that would outlast your own life. Tommy recovered fully and stayed in touch with Robert. On his 12th birthday, he sent Robert a drawing of his dream hospital with playgrounds on every floor. Robert had that drawing framed in his office, a reminder of why he got up each morning. Marcus Aurelius had discovered what Robert learned in that hospital. The deepest satisfaction comes not from what you achieve for yourself, but from what you make possible for others. Personal success becomes meaningful only when it serves a purpose larger than personal gain. This ancient secret reveals that you already have everything you need to find purpose. Your skills, resources, and experiences aren't just personal assets. They're tools waiting to be used in service of something greater. The question isn't whether you're successful enough to make a difference. The question is whether you're willing to use whatever you have to serve the common good. But even service and purpose take on deeper meaning when viewed through the lens of life's ultimate reality. The ninth and final ancient secret provides the perspective that makes everything else possible. Remembering that your time here is limited, precious, and not guaranteed. Ancient secret number 9. Remember you will die. James Washington stood in the hospital hallway in Atlanta at 2:17 a.m., staring at the text message he'd just received. Dad didn't make it. Come when you can. His father, who'd seemed invincible just 3 weeks ago, was gone after a sudden heart attack. At 52, James had always assumed there would be more time to visit, more conversations, more opportunities to say the things that mattered. The last real conversation they'd had was an argument about James's job. His father thought he was wasting his talent as a corporate lawyer, pushing papers instead of pursuing the civil rights work he'd been passionate about in law school. Life's too short to spend it on things that don't matter, his father had said. James had dismissed this as typical dad advice, annoying but harmless. Now, driving through the empty Atlanta streets toward his childhood home, those words echoed with devastating clarity. Life was indeed too short. His father had been 68, which seemed young in a world where people routinely lived into their 80s and 90s. But death doesn't follow statistical averages or personal timelines. Over the next week, James found himself doing something he'd never done before, really examining his life. The funeral brought together people his father had touched, former students he'd taught, families he'd helped as a social worker, community leaders he'd mentored. Speaker after speaker talked about how his father had made a difference, how he'd fought for justice, how he'd lived with purpose. James realized that if he died tomorrow, the speakers at his funeral would talk about his billable hours, his successful contract negotiations, and his contributions to corporate profits. The thought made him sick. His sister, Monica, found him sitting alone in their father's study, surrounded by boxes of personal papers. "Dad saved everything," she said, settling into the chair across from him. "Look at this." She handed James a small notebook filled with their father's handwriting. Flipping through it, James discovered quotes, reflections, and observations their father had collected over the years. One entry, dated just 2 months before his death, stopped James cold. "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Marcus Aurelius. "Dad was reading philosophy?" James asked. Monica nodded. "Started after his first mild heart episode last year. Said it helped him focus on what really mattered." James kept reading. Page after page contained reflections on mortality, purpose, and making the most of limited time. His father had been preparing for death not with morbid obsession, but with intentional living. He'd understood what Marcus Aurelius called memento mori. Remember, you will die. That night, James researched Marcus Aurelius and discovered that the Roman emperor had made mortality awareness central to his philosophy. Not because he was depressed or fatalistic, but because remembering death's inevitability clarified what deserved his time and attention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." The emperor understood that fear of death was often really fear of not having lived authentically, of reaching the end having spent your days trying to impress others rather than pursuing what truly mattered to you. James thought about his own life. He'd become a corporate lawyer not because he loved the work, but because it paid well and impressed people. He'd bought a house in an expensive neighborhood not because he loved the area, but because it signaled success. He'd been living his life based on other people's definitions of achievement rather than his own values. The emperor had faced this same challenge on a massive scale. With unlimited power and wealth, Marcus Aurelius could have spent his days in luxury and self-indulgence. Instead, awareness of mortality drove him to use his time in service of others, to write thoughts that would guide people for thousands of years, to face plagues and wars with courage rather than retreat into comfort. Loss is nothing else but change, Marcus Aurelius had written, and change is nature's delight. James's father's death was devastating, but it was also a wake-up call. The loss of time with his father could become the catalyst for making better use of the time he had left. 3 months later, James made a decision that shocked his colleagues. He left his corporate firm to join a non-profit legal organization focused on criminal justice reform. The pay cut was significant, but for the first time in years, James woke up excited about his work, rather than dreading another day of contracts and mergers. His first case involved defending a teenager wrongfully accused of a crime he didn't commit. Working 18-hour days to prepare for trial, James discovered something remarkable. He wasn't exhausted by the long hours because he believed in what he was doing. When you're spending your time on something that matters, fatigue becomes secondary to purpose. Marcus Aurelius had written, "Do everything as if it was the thought or action of a dying person." This wasn't about being dramatic or morbid, it was about clarity. When you truly accept that your time is limited, trivial concerns lose their power over you. The approval of people you don't respect stops mattering. Petty conflicts become obviously petty. What remains is what actually deserves your attention. James won the case. The teenager went home to his family instead of prison. Standing outside the courthouse, James felt something he hadn't experienced in his corporate career: the satisfaction of using his skills for something larger than profit. His father had been right. Life was too short to spend on things that don't matter. But death wasn't just an ending, it was also a teacher. The awareness of mortality wasn't meant to paralyze you with fear, but to liberate you from fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not having enough money or status or security. Marcus Aurelius understood that when you truly accept the reality of death, you become free to live authentically. You stop postponing the important conversations, the meaningful work, the relationships that actually matter. You stop waiting for someday and start making today count. This final ancient secret reveals that death isn't the opposite of life. It's what gives life meaning. Without the urgency of mortality, everything would feel equally important, which means nothing would be truly important. The knowledge that your time is limited isn't a burden. It's a gift that helps you focus on what deserves your precious, irreplaceable days. James kept his father's notebook on his desk, open to that Marcus Aurelius quote. Every morning, before diving into casework, he would read those words, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It wasn't a morbid reminder. It was a daily invitation to live with intention, courage, and authenticity. The emperor who ruled the world had learned what James discovered in that hospital hallway. Remembering you will die isn't about dwelling on endings. It's about making sure that whatever time you have left counts for something that truly matters. These 9 ancient secrets have guided emperors through plagues, everyday people through personal crises, and countless individuals toward lives of meaning and resilience for over 2,000 years. Now they can guide you. Sarah learned that obstacles become opportunities. Marcus discovered that action creates motivation. Lisa found that anxiety lives in her thoughts, not her circumstances. David built strength through morning discipline. Jessica transformed difficult people into teachers. Michael eliminated overwhelm by asking one essential question. Amanda embraced her fate and found unexpected strength. Robert discovered that service gives life meaning. And James learned that remembering mortality makes every day precious. Each story shows the same truth. These aren't just philosophical concepts. They're practical tools that work in real life with real problems for real people living in the modern world. Here's how to start using all 9 secrets immediately. Secret number 1. When obstacles arise, ask, what opportunity is hidden here? Transform setbacks into comebacks. Secret number 2. Stop waiting for motivation. Take one small action today towards something you've been postponing. Secret number 3. When anxiety hits, ask, what story am I telling myself? Focus on what you can actually control. Secret number 4. Own your first hour. Create a 15-minute morning routine before checking your phone. Secret number 5. With difficult people, be strict with yourself, tolerant with others. Use them to practice patience. Secret number 6. Before saying yes to anything, ask, is this essential? Eliminate the non-essential ruthlessly. Secret number 7. Accept what you cannot change. Ask, how can this challenge make me stronger? Secret number 8. Use your skills to serve something larger than yourself. Find purpose in contribution. Secret number 9. Remember, life is short. Let mortality awareness guide your priorities and authenticity. Marcus Aurelius wrote these principles in his private journal, never intending them to be published. They survived because timeless wisdom always finds a way to reach the people who need it. You've found these secrets because you're ready to use them. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. The Stoics emphasized that philosophy only matters if it changes how you live. Start with one secret that resonates most strongly with you. Practice it daily for a week. Then add another. Small, consistent changes compound into profound transformation. Remember, you don't need perfect circumstances to start living better. You don't need more time, more resources, or more preparation. Marcus Aurelius developed these principles while managing an empire during history's worst plague. If he could find wisdom in chaos, You can find it in whatever circumstances you're facing right now. These 9 secrets aren't the end of your journey. They're the beginning. Ancient wisdom combined with modern stories creates a roadmap for navigating whatever life throws at you with courage, clarity, and purpose. If these stories have inspired you to dive deeper into practical Stoicism, make sure to subscribe to the Stoic Vivu channel. We're building a community of people who believe ancient wisdom can solve modern problems, one story at a time. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and share this video with someone who needs these timeless truths in their life right now. The Stoics believed that wisdom shared is wisdom multiplied. By spreading these principles, you're not just improving your own life, you're contributing to a world where more people handle challenges with grace, treat others with patience, and live with intentional purpose.